AAA games industry is, in large parts, just broken. Plagued by greedy monetization strategies, loot boxes, live services, pointless storefronts, and games that really have no business having a real money marketplace. Games releasing completely broken and unfinished, riddled with bugs and half-baked stories developed by passionate teams, yet pushed by executives, publishers, and industry-wide stories of crunch, horrible working conditions, to meet fiscal deadlines. Under pressure from parent companies and shareholders, the AAA industry faces controversy almost daily. Developers that were once paragons of the industry, who made critically and commercially successful games that took the industry by storm, have made almost irreparable mistakes that have cost some of the most lauded studios their entire reputations. BioWare stands clear as one of these, and it hurts me to say due to my love of their past games, with poorly received games like Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem not living up to the reputation they had spent decades molding. Similarly, Bethesda Game Studios have faced controversy after controversy in the last 18 months, thanks to The Elder Scrolls Blades, a mobile cash grab filled with typical mobile game trash monetization, but more so Fallout 76, a poorly executed excuse for a multiplayer Fallout game. Still riddled a year after release with bugs, a huge lack of captivating stories, and promises broken regarding pay-to-win microtransactions, new content drops with additional story development, and most importantly for some, human NPCs with interesting quests and dialogue options that somewhat resembles Fallouts of the past. Sports games have regressed to reskins of their previous year's release, with little to no improvements to huge swathes of the game, and a huge focus on things like Ultimate Team, the real cash cow for the publishers, even to the point of these yearly franchises having the same old bugs from years before, being unrefined and appearing to lack any respect for their player base, lest you are willing to spend real-world dollars on randomized card packs, or as EA would like you to call them, surprise mechanics. But this year in particular, I've noticed a trend of the AA tier game being more and more attractive to those wanting great stories, great visual design, interesting mechanics, and all the nuance that we crave as players to create a brilliant title. One of the most impressive games I've played this year, with its tight narrative, absolutely beautiful art style and wonderful graphics, simple yet effective gameplay design in an interesting and creative world, was A Plague Tale: Innocence from Asobo Studio. This game simply blew me away, as it delivered an enjoyable experience with well-designed characters in a dark and at times haunting recreation of 14th century France, which embraced fantastical and mystical themes to complement its historical setting. The game's music from Olivier de Riveri has been one of the most thrilling and perfectly fitting soundtracks that really set the scene for so many parts of A Plague Tale, and showed that despite the game's obviously limited budget, that this kind of title can be a complete package and one of the best games of the year so far. Remnant from the Ashes is another game that recently released, also published by Focus Home Interactive, that brought a tough yet enjoyable Souls-like shooter, which did a great job of blending some intrinsic design from the Souls series, bonfires, iframes, impressive boss fights, and mix them with their own creativity, which brings guns into the mix, as well as procedural generation of level and boss encounters, and allows you to play in co-op with two friends. The game looks poised to receive additional content and hopefully ongoing support, because it is a lot of fun, and the world that has been created is really quite intriguing and interesting to explore, and it's not weighed down by slimy business practices. Greedfall is truly a standout experience for me, at least this year. In the wake of BioWare's downfall, which let's hope doesn't continue with Dragon Age 4, there has been a fairly huge chasm left to cater for those who love Western RPGs, with a big focus on creative character builds, but also on dialogue systems and decision-based gameplay that we have come to love from series like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and The Witcher. The developers Spiders did a remarkable job of creating a brand new world to explore, with a handful of factions, all with really deep histories and lore behind them, and an array of choices to make to take the story in different directions. Despite the developers' budgetary limitations clearly showing through the mask of what I think is a really brilliant title, repeated building designs, typos and grammatical errors in subtitles, limited facial designs and below average facial animations, these things really don't matter in comparison to the great story, cool weapon selection, combat diversity, excellent mission structure both in main quests and side missions included, and really memorable and likable companions. Although I've not played their previous games like the Technomancer, public opinion seems to suggest that Greedfall is a much better game than their previous works, and it seems to me like with each iteration from the studio, their work is improving significantly, and I'm personally excited to see where this studio goes in the future. Will they break the shackles of AA quality to really break into the mainstream and give us what BioWare has failed to do so? Only time will tell, but I have to say I'm incredibly excited for what Spiders will do in the future. And then we come to a crossroads, The Outer Worlds. This game is developed by the lauded Obsidian team, headed up by legends of the RPG genre, Tim Kaine and Leonard Boyarsky, and straddles the line between AAA and AA. For all intents and purposes, this game is being treated as a AAA release, and for good reason. Despite it being published by 2K Games' so-called independent publishing arm, Private Division, it is being heavily advertised and pushed by Obsidian's new parent company, Microsoft. After their acquisition last year, although the game is being funded by Private Division and there is no Microsoft name attached whatsoever, Obsidian has become one of the most applauded additions to the Xbox Game Studios lineup, and Phil Spencer and the teams at Microsoft are clearly acutely aware of this. The Outer Worlds was the opener for Microsoft's E3 press briefing this year. It's available day and date on Game Pass on both Xbox and PC, and Matt Booty has even expressed his desire to see The Outer Worlds become a platform-exclusive series moving forward, alongside the big names like Halo, Gears, and Forza. This is impressive company, and since playing The Outer Worlds, I believe it is totally well deserved. The game's creators even went out of their way in pre-release interviews to set the right expectation that this isn't a huge open world. Their budget wasn't gigantic, it's more of a focused, intimate, and highly replayable title. See, 10 years ago, this was the norm. Look at the Mass Effect series, for instance. Each Mass Effect game is crammed with great missions, brilliant writing and storytelling, and hosts of decisions to make, but a completionist playthrough may not even hit the 50-hour mark. And if you push through missions and ignore some of the exploration or side activities, you can finish these games in 20 to 30 hours. This is what made them so replayable. If you spend 30 hours in a game and there are a myriad of choices that you want to see play out in a completely different experience of the game, Paragon versus Renegade, Quarian versus Geth, Solarian versus Krogan, spending another 30 hours is not unheard of. But if you put 100 hours into a game or more, starting that game again after all of that time is a much harder task. And don't get me wrong, I love some of these massive games as well. New Vegas, Skyrim, Witcher 3 to name a few. But it's a tough ask to restart a 100+ hour game and go through it all again to see some different outcomes. And this is where I think The Outer Worlds really hits the mark for me and many others. Due to its budgetary limitations and also the developers' design choices, you're never short of anything to do, and the worlds you explore, people you meet, and stories you uncover are all written and designed so brilliantly, so focused and so meticulously. The open areas you traverse are finite, yet jam-packed with missions, but not bloated with collectibles and fetch quests. Even in this game, you can peek behind the curtain and see repeated buildings and structures which point towards a cheaper alternative to hand-creating every single building, a la The Witcher 3. But this doesn't take away from the game's stellar design, great voice acting to complement the absolutely tremendous writing, and this isn't even mentioning the game's stability and lack of bugs and glitches. These games I've mentioned all have budgetary limitations. They all have smaller teams working on them, published by independent publishers outside of your typical EAs, Activisions, and Ubisofts, but have at times this year put these big names to shame. EA and BioWare's disastrous launch of Anthem, Activision's pathetic use of microtransactions in nearly all of its titles. I will give From Software credit for resisting the hand of Activision and developing the brilliant Sekiro. Ubisoft's cookie-cutter game design that filters into all of its franchises. All of these problems that we see permeate the AAA industry dissolve into the ether when you get to experience these smaller, more focused and passionate titles. You can see the love of the craft for what it is, and not just a way to make all of the money in the world. With season passes, battle passes, microtransaction stores, a confusing array of currencies, pay to win, boosters and time savers. There are, of course, exceptions to the rule in the AAA space. Nintendo and Sony in particular have a pretty solid track record, and I'll give them credit where it's due. But the more we see these smaller publishers support smaller titles and teams to the point that they enter the public's vision and become more of the norm, the better off we are as gamers. But now I'll put it over to you guys. Drop a comment below about your favourite AA games of 2019. I'm sure there's plenty that I've missed, so let's have a discussion below. And if you want to keep up with everything that I'm doing, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and also follow me over on Twitter @DirectGaming. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, peace.